Yeah, great fires, folks. They like to burn everything down, burn the old world down so we have no reference point. So do we think that we are currently at the pinnacle of human creation, where nothing could be further from the truth. And they'd like to do it, folks. They'd like to have these fires. As it showed you, most of those fires were in the 1800s or the early 1900s. Around that time, there were fires in almost every major city on Earth. I mean, what you saw at the start there was just a tip of the iceberg. And they're kind of still doing it, you know. Recently there was a fire on Easter Island as well, where the Moai statues were badly burnt, badly damaged. Some of the statues were cracked by fire, and some of them were actually partially melted.
Es incuantificable, inconmensurable el daño que hay. Es irrecuperable tampoco, porque lo que hace el fuego calienta la piedra y la piedra se craquea, y entonces ahí va a tener que entrar los científicos nuestros en la isla junto con la comunidad administradora del parque para hacer el análisis correspondiente y ver cuán grande es este daño que ha hecho y qué vamos a hacer a futuro. No sé si hay solución para eso. Estas cosas que suceden en Rapa Nui, que son graves porque daña la imagen de Chile país, tiene solución. Y la solución está en manos de un Estado que está ausente. Ha estado ausente, sigue ausente y no quiere escuchar lo que la isla ha planificado para prevenir estos problemas.
Para nosotros es súper doloroso ver cómo se queman los moai, porque ya el moai tiene un daño a la intemperie con las lluvias, el sol, los vientos se va desgastando, y el fuego les acelera el proceso de daño a los moai.
Now, what causes statues to partially melt like that, like stone to partially melt that way? We see a lot of vitrified fortresses, old vitrified castles across Europe as well. I've done whole shows on this back in probably 2016 or 2017, maybe later than there, but I was talking about ancient history and the fact that there are vitrified ruins all across Europe. I mean, the story is that they give us was that the people defending these structures set huge fires on the wall to strengthen the stone, which doesn't make sense, because when you vitrify stone, you basically turn it to glass and you weaken it. So none of it really makes sense. And you've got to kind of wonder what would cause stone to melt in this way. I mean, the only time you really see stone melt is in temperatures that are similar to volcanic temperatures, where this will melt stone. I mean, a lava flow will go through a stone wall, it'll go through a house, it'll go through anything. There's no barrier you can put up to stop a lava flow. It will simply consume the barrier and turn it into lava and continue on its way. But you've got to wonder what sort of stone were these buildings built of that they would melt this way. What are the Moai really built of on Easter Island if they would melt this way due to a bad fire? You know, there's a lot of talk of synthetic stone, artificial stone that's been manufactured, that a lot of these monuments were built from. This is stuff that I talked about with the Mayan ruins at places like Ollantaytambo and Sacsayhuaman. even Machu Picchu to an extent. There's a lot of stuff around the world which appears to be made of artificial stone. The pyramids appear to be made of artificial stone as well. I put out a book in 2005 where I talked about the fact that the pyramids are actually poured. They're a form of concrete. They're geopolymer, which is kind of a form of concrete. Maybe made from different stuff to modern concrete, but it's a similar concept. You blend stuff together, you mix it, it solidifies as a conjunction of all these things, and you create concrete. Conjunction-crete, you know, that's the way it works, folks. It isn't necessarily manufactured products you use for concrete. So all of these things appear to have been manufactured. Even some of the sculptures that you see, some of the most incredible sculptures that we're told are sculptures, apparently sculpted out of marble. The guy with the fishing net that I've showed you before, I mean, there's no way this was done just by some sculptor sitting there with a hammer and chisel, even with fine sandpaper. I mean, you're not going to get this type of finish. You're not going to be able to get this type of detail without employing some other method, and I would suggest the method was the synthesis of stone. These were made artificially. There's also a stele at Elephantine in Egypt which talks about how to synthesize stone, how to dissolve limestone, mix it with crushed aggregates and let it solidify, and it turns back into limestone, only much, much stronger than what it was. So there's every indication that all of this stuff is made from artificial stone, and that's why we see it as such a wonder and such an incredible artistic creation. Because it wasn't actually an artistic creation, well I guess it was, but it wasn't created in the way we are told that it was created. There wasn't some guy with a hammer and chisel. And the pyramids were not constructed, the pyramids of Egypt were not constructed by people dragging cut stones over large distances and piling them on top of one another. The pyramids were boxed up and they were poured, and that's why there's no mortar between the stones, why the joints are so perfect. Why you've got places like in Sacsayhuaman in Peru where all of the joints between the stones are absolutely perfect, and like the face of the stones looks unfinished and rough because it was just placed in there like a softened stone. It's like building a wall out of Play-Doh and then letting it go hard. Or even more than that, I mean just pouring sections of it, boxing it up, bringing this sludge in. You can see marks there where they worked it and they kept it in place, let it solidify. Some of the big stones in Sacsayhuaman, you can see where there's been 3 or 4 pours that have actually made up the whole slab. So, you know, don't believe too much of what they're telling us, folks, with everything, not just history, but with everything. They really want to hide the old world. Yeah, and the old world, I mean, we certainly are not at the pinnacle of human civilization and human creation the way they want us to think we are. We had free energy in the old world, and there's even forms of energy we can get now which are far more productive and beneficial than what we're using.
Aluminium pan floating on an invisible cradle of electric waves. Go home and tell your wife you've seen it, and see if she believes you were sober. Or go home and tell her you found a new way to cook the breakfast eggs and bacon, in a pan without any contact with heat or flame. She'll be certain you weren't sober. Underneath the pan are coils which send up invisible electric waves of energy, and that energy produces eddy currents in the metal of the pan, and those eddy currents cause enough heat in the metal to cook the breakfast. Or you can use the eddy currents to light electric bulbs. So go home and tell your wife you found a new way to light the house, with bulbs that glow without any wires to connect them to the mains. She'll know you weren't sober.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting looking thing. Of course you need electricity to power it. I mean, I'm not saying that's free energy or anything like that, but it's an interesting looking thing, a levitation. People wonder how UFOs, if they're real, exist. And UFOs are real, folks. The question is, who drives them? Is it alien technology or is it our technology? Well, they're real. I mean, I've seen them myself and no, I wasn't hallucinating. So that type of electromagnetic force that was being generated by that stove, where that plate was kind of hovering above the stove, gives you a good indication of just how these machines might work and why they might fly. You know, the Vimana that they talk about from ancient days. I think there was a lot more to the Vimana of ancient days. I actually think we powered them ourselves because we knew how to connect with the field. We knew how to put ourselves in the correct brain state. We understood that all matter is simply light and sound, and if it's applied correctly, you can do miraculous things with it. You know, the stories of the flying carpets, the stories of all sorts of stuff. There's roads that they found that have got like metal plates underneath the roads as well. People will say, oh, this is simply a way of creating solid foundations for the roads. I don't know, I can think of easier ways to create solid foundation for the road than making these perfectly aligned metal plates which kind of form these patterns over the road. I think if you wanted to use metal to reinforce the road, you'd just use bars of Rio or something. I mean, you wouldn't do it like this. There'd be a far easier and cheaper way to do it than to be constructing those type of interlocking metal plates. So none of that sort of rings true to me, folks, at all. But we know we had a very, very different world to what we have now. And none of it needs to be done the way it's currently being done. I've created this false history and this false world and this false reality. And really, like I've said before, I mean, you can argue over whether the world's round or flat or whatever. I can find more evidence of this being a hologram than anything else. I mean, even my body, even some of the stuff they tell us about our bodies, you know, the cells in our bodies, they've never really defined a cell. The DNA that we have, they've never really defined a DNA. You know, like, you can look at DNA, it's a double helix, a double spiral, they tell us. Well, it's a lovely graphic, but can you show me some? And they can't. They still can't figure out what an atom is. They say everything's made of atoms, and they still can't figure out what an atom actually is. You know, all laws of physics, and even the Big Bang and all this sort of stuff, it all goes back to the singularity when the Big Bang happened. But once you go past the Big Bang, it all breaks down. There's no reference point. Physics collapses when you come to the Big Bang. So, is DNA real? Are cells real? Is our body doing any of the things that they tell us it's doing? Or are we simply programming it to do these things because of the information that we're fed? If you believe your body is made of cells, if you believe your organs can break down, if you believe this and you believe that, well, you can create that reality, because we manifest this reality completely ourselves. I mean, I can find more evidence of the Earth being holographic than anything else. Like I said, even my body. So you've got to wonder, you know, all the stuff that they've put into our minds and the false history and the false everything. You know, they want us to believe that we lived in this feudal society. Well, we didn't, because we had free energy. See, everything that keeps the wars going is through the need for energy. Even with what Israel's doing in Palestine, they want the whole country because it's about the energy they can generate from that. They get the gas fields off the shore. They want to put the Ben Gurion Canal through. They want to become this independent state so they can produce certain things. They need to produce their own electricity, blah, blah, blah. You know, all of these things that we steal from each other and fight wars over is because we perceive ourselves to be depleted in some way in our own country, and we want to steal that energy from another country. I mean, sometimes there's wholesome, righteous reasons for doing things. I mean, even when you look at World War I and World War II, and you look at Hitler's reason for going into Poland and going into Czechoslovakia, it was because of the Versailles Treaty, which basically gave a lot of Germany away after World War I, and the German people were being massacred, and they were being slaughtered, they were being ethnically cleansed in these two countries, and so Hitler went in to protect the German people. You could even look at the war in Ukraine and what's been going on in Donbass. You could say, you could argue, it would be a valid argument to put up that Putin actually went into Ukraine, which was never really defined as a country anyway, but Putin went into Ukraine in order to prevent the Russians from being massacred in Donbass. But this has been going on for 8 years. Why didn't he go in 8 years ago and stop it? He went in exactly when they needed him to go in, because, you know, they don't care. All these wars are about depopulation. I mean, all war is mass murder, legalized. That's all it is. You got all these people, they put on all these sigils and fancy uniforms, and they dress themselves up with occult symbolism, and they go to these places and they carry out mass murder. That's what wars are, and they're all completely and utterly unnecessary. And I don't think we had wars like this. I don't think that was the type of society we lived in. If we lived in societies where energy was short and we had to fight each other to get hold of the precious resources, well, we wouldn't have built all these incredibly beautiful things, all these incredible beautiful structures across Europe and across the whole world. And it isn't just Europe. You'll find these structures in the Philippines, in Japan, in Australia, in Canada. Find them everywhere. Even going back to the statues on Easter Island, which appear to be made of synthetic stone or artificial stone, otherwise they wouldn't have melted the way they appear to have done. So all of this stuff indicates that we lived in a cooperative society where we had free energy. You know, if you were employing people, employing labourers and builders and things to build these temples and churches and government buildings, they'd be on the clock. You'd just want it done efficiently and quickly and functionally. You wouldn't want all of this extra added beauty and all of this stuff put there. People added it because they loved what they did. They understood that beauty is also a form of energy. Beauty is also a form of food. If you live in beautiful surroundings and things are beautiful to look at, it makes you feel good about your life. It helps you cooperate with other people because you're surrounded by beauty all the time. None of our cities are like that. You know, when things collapse in the United States, in these big, square, conglomerate, horrible-looking cities that we've built, it's going to turn into a domestic war zone. Like, you're going to have people literally eating each other on the street. And literally, folks, because the food's going to break down. They're injecting all these cannibals into everything. Even an article I saw the other day saying, is cannibalism so bad? You know, should we be so judgmental of cultures that have always done this? Just trying to normalise it. Even in 2018, I was showing you a video which has recently surfaced again, of them saying, oh look, the elites have found that by consuming young blood, they can de-age themselves.
On the Health Watch, could the secret to eternal youth be found in blood transfusions from young people? Health reporter Stephanie Stahl has more on a controversial new treatment that's being tested.
Transfusions with young blood from teenagers. Some claim it can reverse the aging process. It's being tested in patients over the age of 35 as part of a clinical trial called Ambrosia, where people paid $8,000 to get the rich growth factors found in blood plasma platelets.
It's pretty much people from most states, people from overseas, from Europe and Australia.
Results of the trial have not been published, but Dr. Jesse Karzeman, who plans to open a business selling young blood, says patients who've had it say they feel amazing. And he says he's seen evidence of reversing the aging process in rats.
Their brains are younger, hearts, their hair, if it was gray, it turns dark again.
There's also been encouraging Alzheimer's research using young blood at Stanford.
So that's interesting stuff, isn't it? So they're kind of putting it out there, folks. Oh yeah, you can drink young blood, it makes you feel good, keeps you young, and cannibalism really isn't so bad. We shouldn't be so judgmental. You can't make this shit up. Absolutely insane, folks. And you know, still going about destroying the old world. And back to ISIS, this is what ISIS did across the Middle East. ISIS destroyed Aleppo, Palmyra, what they're doing in Gaza now in Palestine. Nablus, there's a city in Palestine called Nablus in the West Bank. It's like 9,000 years old. And Israel is intent on destroying all this. Destroying all of the old world, folks, because the old world had us connected. The old world had free energy, you know, and if we had free energy, we wouldn't have wars. We wouldn't have leaders. We wouldn't need all of the stuff that we've got at the moment. But, you know, they want leaders, but more leaders, more greed. People get into a position of leadership and they just want more and more, you know. And it isn't that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. I don't believe that. If you gave me power, you gave me absolute power, I wouldn't be corrupted. I'd simply get rid of the bad guys and let people do what they wanted to do. But the thing is, I don't want the gig. I don't want to lead you. I don't want to be the president of a country. I don't want to be the leader of a movement. I don't want to be any of that sort of stuff. I just want to be Max and get on with my life and enjoy the life that I have and enjoy the company of the people that I love and enjoy exploring and experiencing the world to the best of my potential. That's all I want out of this. As I said before, yeah, I think we come here to grow our souls. This is a place we come, it's kind of like an exam to see if you're ready for the next level. You're not going to ascend or go to heaven or go be involved in a rapture or any of the things that people think it is, you know, whatever their version of leaving this realm is. You're not going to do that unless you are mentally, spiritually, psychically, psychologically, and emotionally prepared to go to that level. And you come here and you get all these choices and you get the opportunity to do the wrong thing in everything that you do. Should you take that choice? You know, succumb to temptation, do this, do that. You know, people wonder what the source of evil is. You can get back to religious stuff. You can start talking about, you know, the devil or the archons or Satan or Lucifer or, you know, alien intervention or whatever you want to talk about. You can find ways of explaining it. But really it's only on a surface level. What does your heart say? What does your head say yourself? When you really immerse yourself into this reality and do a little bit of meditation and go inside and start looking around you and feeling the energy of this realm that we live in, you realize that evil has to exist, because that's what this realm is. Some people would say you're already in hell. You don't have to go to hell, you're in hell. We all did something wrong and we got cast down and we're here in hell. And the way to get out of hell, the way to get out of this reincarnation cycle that we're in and keep coming back and doing this, is to realize that you're here to make these choices. And it's okay if you mess up for part of your life. It's okay. I mean, I did. My life was a train wreck the first 40 years of my life. I was doing all sorts of crazy stuff. But it doesn't matter, as long as you can suddenly see it for what it is and you can make the right choices in what you do. But if evil didn't exist, what would be the point? What would be the point of coming here? Even if this is hell, it's not somewhere you're going to be thrown into and punished for eternity. You're going to be here for eons and eons in eternity, enslaved to the devil, all this sort of stuff. They tell you in the Christian religion, you do what God says or God will throw you in hell where your soul will be tortured for eternity. Does that really sound like a benevolent God? No, it doesn't. It sounds like someone who's a complete arsehole. And I don't think that's what any God would do. They will put you in a place like this, which is more of a purgatory than a hell, where you've got good on one side and you've got evil on the other, but it's up to you to make that choice. If you don't make the choice, well, you come back and you do it again until you learn what the choice is and learn what good is and learn what evil is and learn that all evil that exists in this world comes from the hand of man. It's perpetrated by us. We're not the victim of evil. We actually create evil. Yeah, I mean, what a world, folks. What a world that we live in. And it's just going to get more and more crazy as the days go on. And I still see it as opportunity for people to wake up to themselves, but really it's a personal thing. As I said before, I can't see us changing the world. I mean, they've done these resets many times before. This seems to be a very dramatic one. We seem to be almost at the last stage where this realm won't even exist for much longer after this reset. And I've often speculated that I believe we started, or our consciousness was connected to higher beings within this realm. And higher beings as much as more spiritually connected, but also higher, taller, like giants. We see remnants of giants. People might argue that this is the Nephilim, and look at some of the biblical tales. The giants came here to enslave us and we finally escaped or whatever. Perhaps that's true. Who knows, folks? Who knows what the real history is? We just don't. We've got no idea what our real history is. But there's evidence that we once lived in a realm that was more like Avatar than anything else. Even for those who've drank ayahuasca can actually see into the spirit realm and see the remnants of that old world that we had. Look at the giant silicon trees, the tree stumps that they pass off as tabletop mountains. I'm convinced these are tree stumps, folks.
The sheer size and scale of what this realm once was. We are but the ants now, living in the shadows of this giant forest. We are kept deliberately in the dark of our true history, the true science and makeup of this world. They want us thinking these are nothing more than random piles of rocks, while we spin on a random ball, hurtling into a space of nothingness. But evidence of the much grander life can be found all around you. You just have to open up your eyes and not blindly accept the narrative put to us without question. History is nothing more than a set of lies agreed upon, ones we never agreed to. Geology truly is hardened biology. Question everything, friends.
Even when you look at things such as the petrified forest in Arizona, how is this petrified forest? I mean, how does a wooden tree turn into gemstones? Something might petrify and turn to stone. Okay, you can sell that to people, but how does it turn into gemstones? That doesn't really make sense. And they tell us petrification takes millions of years. Actually, no, it doesn't. It takes 20 or 30. All you've got to do is immerse something in saline solution, like muddy, salty mud, and it will petrify. Minerals and saline together, it petrifies. That's the way it works. They found petrified feet. Some petrified foot they found that had a shoe on it, and they recognised the manufacturer. Recognised the shoe company that made the shoe, and this was just from around 1900 or something. So petrification doesn't take as long as they tell us it takes. Everything they've sold us is a lie, but because we've been reduced now to what we've got, I mean, what's the place going to look like after this next reset? How small are the people going to be in the new world they're creating? Is it going to be anything like this world? It's an extinction level event, like I said, that we're facing here, folks, but it's a slow kill. And ultimately, I can't see too many ways of stopping it. Well, ultimately, it's just going to end up with people killing themselves and becoming more and more enslaved to government, and that is the plan. And the way to get through it is to look above it all and to realise that you're here to grow your own soul. It's not necessarily about personal salvation even, it's about salvation of the self, and there's only one self. We're all part of the self. People won't argue that and argue the whole in Lakesh thing and say, well, I'm not, you say there's only one of us here, but I'm not connected to people like Bibi Netanyahu. Actually, yes, you are. We all are, because there is a single consciousness here. I would say there are certain frequencies of this consciousness that come into this world to create these sort of situations to help us notice. I mean, going back to even what I said before about the pop industry undermining the morals of people and not even realising how they were doing it. The whole music industry causing this promiscuity, encouraging men to dress like women, encouraging women to be more like men. It's a gradual thing that's been happening. The women's liberation movement to get women out of the home and get them into the workforce so that more of the population could be taxed, and so that the mothers aren't bringing up their children, giving their children to the state and programming them into what they want them to be. I mean, look what has happened to the world. Look at the mindset of the kids now. Since they've been educated by the government rather than by their parents, they don't really get brought up by their parents anymore. They get brought up by the TV, by video games, by their cell phone assistant, by the culture that they live in. They don't really have parents, and a lot of the parents, new parents in the world, don't even know what it is to be a parent because they never had a real parent. Now, even when I was a kid, I mean, my mum kind of tried a little bit, but she was a bit of a drunk, and she was out there working every day. She was out there pumping gas at a gas station in order to get the money to put us all through school, which is really just indoctrinating us. So we all get programmed by these people, and it's become more and more dramatic as the years have gone on. There's very few kids now who are brought up by proper parents. I mean, sure, there's some. I'm not saying there's none, but in Western society, most of these kids are brought up by the society around them, not by their parents. They form their own ideas, and even if the parents are trying to do a good job, well, the kids get on their cell phones, they go to these websites, they play these video games that are all full of subliminal programming, they watch TV shows, they're subject to the peer group pressure, pornography is just all over the place on the internet. I mean, you can see what they're subject to. So even if you're a good parent, you're still fighting an uphill battle. You've got all of this stuff that is influencing your child anyway. So what you've really got to be instilling into these kids is that it's about the choice. It's about the choice between good and evil. Evil has to exist, and it might seem like fun for a while, but it's just another form of slavery. It's what keeps you coming back to this realm. It's what keeps us divided. It's what keeps us distracted from the path through life. Because if you can find yourself and become the best version of yourself that you can be and emanate that to other people, then you change them as well. There might be certain people you can't change, like the Rothschilds and Bibi Netanyahu and George Bush and Barack Obama and all these people, because that's the world that they're in. But again, they have to exist in order to give you the choice to make the right decision. If you didn't have the choice to go wrong, how would you ever choose to go right? That's the question, folks. A lot of people don't really want to consider that, but it's a valid question. It's something people need to think about. I mean, evil has to exist, folks. Otherwise, you don't get to choose to do good. But the world's really become a crazy place, and as I said, I can't see any way that we are going to actually change this system by voting people in, voting people out, whatever. The system basically has to fall and crash and burn. We're almost in a period where the timelines are going to split. That's what it feels like anyway. Doesn't mean you're suddenly going to find yourself in a new world and this other world isn't going to exist and it's all going to be fairies and butterflies and roses and the other world's all going to be satanic and death and misery. I think they will coexist in the same place, but one will become less of an interest to you. There'll be evil stuff going on in the world, but you'll be more focused on this good path and this wholesome path which is presenting itself to all of us through the choices that we make. And eventually there'll be that bad stuff going on, but you won't even think about it. You'll be on your own timeline, on your own trajectory, and you'll be influencing the people around you with that trajectory. We can do this, folks. We can get through this, but we've got to see the challenges that we're up against. And we've really got to understand that a lot of what we're experiencing here is manifestation. It's us creating it by our belief in what we think. And we're being told what to think. We've been given all of this stuff to keep us in that negative state, rather than viewing the negativity as an opportunity for healing. The whole idea of this realm is to free the human spirit, to grow your soul, to be able to return to source, return to the creator, return to God, whatever you want to call it to be. And people think it's all about individual salvation, or it's all about this little new age movement I'm in, or it's all about my religion, or it's all about this, or it's all about that. And all I've got to do is focus on myself, ignore all the bad stuff, and it'll all go away. This type of ignorance is what creates this massive explosion of evil in the world, because you're not noticing it, you're not getting it. So here, have a bit more, have a bit more, have a bit more. Put it so in your face that you simply don't have a choice other than to notice it eventually. That's what it gets to. And if you're not going to notice it, well, here, have this jab, go and kill yourselves off, because that's what people are doing. And even that was a choice. All these people, I mean, shouldn't all us people who didn't wear masks and didn't take the jab and didn't have the PCR tests and didn't comply with any of this at all, shouldn't we be dead now if COVID was real? But we're not. It's all the people who had the jab who are dying from unrelated issues. It's so obvious what's going on, but even through this, a lot of people will choose willful ignorance. That's just what they do. They don't see the opportunity that's been provided to them. It's just willful ignorance. They'll just go the other way and think, well, with all this stuff going on, I just need to work on myself a little bit more and fix my own little path through life up a little bit more, and I'll be good, because that's what it's about. They don't realise there's really only oneself, there's only really one of us here. And again, all you've really got to do to create that world, folks, is be the best version of yourself you possibly can. There's no movement to join. There's no government to overthrow. It's your belief in authority that is the problem. That's the only way government's even able to operate, because people believe authority is real. It's not. It's just an idea. It's just a concept. It's like your nation. It's like the border around your nation. Oh, Max is calling for open borders. You only need closed borders because we have governments who are in a situation of feudalism. If we weren't in a state of feudalism and we were all living cooperatively and we all had free energy and we all had these incredibly ornate buildings and all this stuff that we used to have, why would we need borders the way they are? Sure, there'd be an area that defines, okay, you're moving from Romania into Russia, or you're moving from Germany into France. You know, we speak German, you speak French. We're a different country. But hey, welcome, come and check it out. It's all good. You know that the French don't want to come and steal Germany, because what do they want to steal it for? Then they wouldn't be able to get to come and experience Germany, experience the German culture, experience any of these people. They don't want to steal any of this shit, they just want to experience it. It's the same like in all countries, that's the way it used to be. But we don't get any of that anymore, because now we've got this whole feudal mindset put into us. And it never used to be like that. You know, you'd go and just experience other cultures, experience Persia, experience Arabia, experience the West, experience the East, and just learn from each other. We have an opportunity to do that again. We have an opportunity to move back into that, but we've got to get over ourselves. And the only thing that's stopping us doing it is leaders. Like I said, the more leaders you have, the more greed you have, the more rules you have, the more things go wrong in your life. And the more wars you have, the more everything goes wrong, because you get these parasites in control simply because people are too afraid to lead themselves. It's remarkable, folks. It's remarkable. But as I've said, even with that, I mean, I can't see any way of really bringing this world back online without us bringing ourselves back online. And if we bring ourselves back online, that's all we have to do. We don't have to change the world. If we suddenly do the right thing in all that we do. If we operate always within our moral compass, then the world has to change around us. It doesn't have a choice, because all evil that exists in the world is a creation of us, because we are not in our moral compass. We're not doing the right thing in all that we do. We're following legislation which causes us to step outside our moral compass, and we're okay with that because we don't believe in ourselves and we believe we need leaders. And the more we do that, well, that's why the world's in the state it's in, folks. The world is in the state that it's in today because of people's willingness to follow orders that are dictated to them by parasites who do not have their best interests at heart, and who, through the belief in authority, have managed to move the world into this absolutely dystopian, dysfunctional nightmare that it is quickly becoming. It's time people acknowledge that, folks. I really do. And that's how to heal the world. A lot of people don't want to hear it because it requires their participation. And people want the world to be healed. They just don't want to be having to participate in that healing in any way, because they just want to get the newsletter to tell them that the world has been saved and it's all good now. They don't realise that they hold the key to their own salvation, and we all do, folks. And if you really want to get into religion and whether Christ existed or not, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But if he did, this was also his message. If you read some of the stuff in the Bible, it was also his message. There's a lot of good spiritual teachings in the Bible. There's a lot of bullshit, but there's a lot of good spiritual teachings that you could apply to your life as well. In many spiritual books there are. All of the New Age stuff is kind of real selfish. It's kind of real, just it's all about you. And, you know, just meditation's going to change the world. Well, it's going to change your perspective of yourself. That's why religion will tell you meditation's so bad, don't do any of that, that's of the devil. No, if you're discovering what you are and where your thoughts coming from, this isn't about the devil, folks. It's about getting to know yourself, and it's about escaping this trap that we are in, this realm that we keep coming back to. And I think we do keep coming back to it, folks. In fact, I think we come back and we live exactly the same life, and we have the same choices and the same opportunities. Hopefully we retain a little bit of that knowledge along the way, and we don't make the same bad choices that we made. And I would suggest that this is what deja vu is all about. I've done whole shows where I've talked about the fact that I haven't had a deja vu since I stepped onto my true path in life, because I don't think I'm making the same mistakes that I made last time. Who knows? Maybe I won't come back after this one. Who knows, folks? Maybe I'll find a way of escaping the trap. But the thing is that we all can. And what if there is really only one of us here and it's a single consciousness? Well, how do you escape the trap personally? How does your frequency escape the trap if the rest of the people are still trapped in it? And we're all connected to a single consciousness. I don't know. Maybe we just go back a frequency at a time, folks. Who knows how it works? But like I said, I think one of the main things that's got in the way and kept us in this prison is our belief in authority and our belief in these Abrahamic religions, which I think are an absolute blight on human existence. And in fact, if you look at history, the leading cause of death in the last 2,000 years has been Abrahamic religions.